Good afternoon. It's Tuesday the 26th of January 2016, just after 1 p.m. and welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson, and today I'm joined by Mother Agnes Mariam, who's been working tirelessly in Syria for over 20 years and before that in Lebanon. Welcome, Mother Agnes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Right, well, thank you very much for joining us. I wanted to begin just by asking about President Assad and how things were in Syria over the last 20 years or so, because since you were there, because as far as the British government is concerned, and to a certain extent the British media, the only outcome they want to see is the removal of President Assad. So what was life like in Syria prior to 2011? And why is it, do you think, that well, maybe you don't want to comment on this, but why is it, do you think, that it has been the policy of Western governments, and quite including Britain, to see regime change in Syria?
You know, I am not Syrian. I work and live in Syria since 20 years, but I am not Syrian, and I am not involved in any political move. So even as a normal resident, I do not interfere, and I do not try to find out what is happening on a political level or even a social public level. Of course, we help poor people, people in need. It's our mission. Our mission is also to pray. Normally, we have good experience in Syria, it's a pluralistic society. We were living in peace, a lot of security. It means that we could move, we could travel, maybe after midnight, passing from Syria to Lebanon. And we had never had anything, any attack, not even any robbery. It was a time of prosperity also. You know, in Syria, you have education, free education for everybody, high rate of literacy. You have also free health for everybody, and they were doing a lot of progress. Very good conservation of the cultural heritage, and most of all, a dialogue, a beautiful dialogue with within the civilian society, among the spiritual leaders, and interaction between communities, no taboos, but transparency, and the religion was not on a discriminatory base. Everything was inclusive. So normally, Syria was a peaceful country, boosting in tourism, boosting in culture. That's all what I can say. We have never seen any poor person. It means everybody had self-sufficiency, a lot of people working in agriculture, a lot of big traders. It was a good place to live. That's all what I can say, and all what I can remember. And I did not interfere in any other fields.
Okay, understood. And since 2011, that has clearly broken down in the most horrendous way. So, and I realize this is probably an obvious thing to ask, but I mean, how is life for people now? Because many people in this country aren't necessarily getting the whole picture. So is there anything you can tell us about life in Syria since the trouble in 2011?
Well, it's important to underline that the big titles that we have been seeing, and we are still seeing them in the media, the mainstream media, were just titles. They had no roots in the reality. They were promising an Arabic spring. Everybody, a lot of people, very powerful people, were interfering to bring democracy, they said, to Syria, to bring freedom, to bring equality, to bring equality of chances, etc. In reality, what we have seen since the very beginning was a religious move. It was very religious since the beginning. It means an Islamic move. And even between the Muslim people, this move was considered as ambiguous because Syria is a secular state and the majority of the population live on a secular base. It means they don't like that religion interferes in the everyday public life. And Syria is, as I said, a pluralistic society. So if one of the many communities that form part of the Syrian society begins to want to have its own, how to tell you, its own power, its own rule, it brings a lot of disturbance for the others. And we have seen people suing, a religious war on a discriminatory basis. Many satellite stations were hired, and very quickly we have seen a kind of wave of apartheid, a kind of new apartheid. If you are not Sunni, if you are not Muslim, it means that somebody is hating you and you do not merit to live. And this was slowly, but very quickly, because in 2011, in November 2011, I went to Homs to see what was happening with my own eyes. And this very day, I have seen 100 corpses of people, innocent civilian, killed by unknown fighters on a discriminatory basis. So what I can say, the titles and the good intention, and many people had good intentions. Many people, some of the friends of our monastery, they wanted, always to get involved in more freedom of expression, democracy. You can always pretend to, to a better reform, etc. But very quickly, those people, they withdrew. And what I have also to underline is that it begins so-called peacefully, but in reality, it was very much infiltrated with a fifth column that was killing everywhere and in the most horrendous way. And that's why where we have arrived now is not something that was newly just generating from nowhere. It is the conclusion or the development of a point of view, of a ideology that was present since the beginning and that is just deployed. And it is a real trauma for everybody. And today Syria is no more what we have got used to live and to see. Syria is hell. It is the country of all the distresses, of all the suffering in the world. And it's not myself, but the General Secretary of UNCHR said that it is the biggest humanitarian catastrophe after World War II.
So where did this fifth column come from? Were these external foreign groups coming into the country, or what was the source of this?
Well, now, today, we have, and it is well documented everywhere, that we have more than people coming from more than 100 different countries, terrorists, Islamist terrorists. They pertain to Al Qaeda, they pertain to the so-called Islamic State, and to other formations that are Muslim, but in a radical way, radically Muslim. It means they perform their religion on the basis of jihad. And jihad means for them to kill those who are infidels, to kill those who are not like them, even Muslims. So those people, they were infiltrated. In the beginning, maybe you had dormant cells because they begin to move from within the society. But slowly by slowly, we have been in contact with many fighters, and they told us that they had a lot of people coming from abroad. And those terrorists coming from abroad, I call them terrorists because now the international committee called them terrorists. Those people coming from abroad, they used to despise the Syrian people, the Syrian fighters. And they had their own agenda. And now we can ask ourselves, how is it possible in our world today, where you have cameras everywhere, where you have very sophisticated means of inquiry, of research, and of protection? How is it possible that so many thousands of people, they just, come around, they pass through international airports, through all this heavy surveillance, and they enter through many border points, and they are here. And who is financing them? Because they have everything. They have their salary, they have weapons, they have even very good information on how to destroy everything in Syria.
But it's not just foreign fighters as well, because there's lots of activity from non-governmental organizations in Syria as well. What are they having a generally positive or a generally negative effect on what's going on there, do you think?
You are talking about the fighters?
No, I'm talking about non-governmental organizations, the organizations that are there saying that they're there to help. Are they helping, or is there a bit of other stuff going on as well?
You have since 2013. Well, before the International Red Cross entered into Syria, I think after I wrote a public letter to the president asking for the intervention of the Red Cross for prisoners, political prisoners, and conflict wounded people. But in 2013, the United Nations agencies entered inside Syria, and since then they are working with, I think, 14 or more international NGO. So those people are making beautiful work. We collaborate with them, and they are a factor of stabilization. We really thank all those teams that are really spending their time and sometimes putting their life at risk to help the Syrian people. Of course, it's not the perfection to just jump from a situation of self-sufficiency. Syria was a country without any external debt before the conflict. And as I told you, you'd rather not see any people in need. Now everybody is in need. You have 13 million and a half of people in need of humanitarian assistance in Syria. It means more than the half of the population. And many are roofless. They are IDPs inside their own country. And 4 millions had to flee out of the country. So it is really a disaster, and we thank God for any external help, humanitarian help, especially the help of the United Nations organization and the international NGOs, and of course all the national NGOs. Everybody is striving to help. And we as a monastery, the monastery of St. James the Mutilated, we are striving to help since the beginning of the crisis. We have a lot of benefactors in UK, and I would like to thank them for their endeavor and for their generosity.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, you did mention the refugee situation. Just before we come on to that, I just wanted to ask about Madaya and places like this, which are being described in the Western media as being under siege, and that President Assad is refusing to allow food aid into these areas. Can you give us a bit of an update on exactly what is going on in Madaya and who is responsible for the hunger that people are facing?
Yes. You know, in Syria, since the beginning of the crisis, we are used to media scoop, media buzz. It means that the media, when they want to call the attention of the public, they just, they just unleash an information, and they work on it. They exaggerate it. They make it sound very horrendous to attract the attention. And it is a political move. It's not a humanitarian move. So Madaya is a political move. It doesn't mean that people are not besieged. Madaya is besieged. You have many places that are besieged in Syria from both sides. For example, Madaya is besieged by Hezbollah and the Syrian army. Other places like Deir ez-Zor is besieged by the Islamic State. Al-Hasaki is roughly also besieged by the Islamic State. You have many places that are hard to reach areas or besieged areas. Now, why, for example, Madaya and not Deir ez-Zor? Why Madaya and not Hasaki, where not only people are hardly finding what to eat, it means they find, everybody in Syria find, but it's very costly. And that's why people can starve, because they don't have money to eat. Now, in Al-Hasaki, moreover, you had attacks and car blasts, and many people were dying and died. Nobody talked about it. But Madaya was chosen because it is in a certain place, and it fits with political interest. And I just repeat that it's not my intent to diminish the distress of those people. We try to help them, and we try to help any person that is in need. Now, the photos you have seen of emaciated people, skeleton-like children, are fake. And we have had many people, many experts, they made their studies, and they found out that those pictures are a remake from picture taken in another places and in another time. So this is dishonest. I would like to refer here to my proper experience in Muaddamiyya, in 2013, if you remember, Muaddamiyah was also, and it is still, a besieged city. And on the Facebook, we could see pictures analog to what we have seen from Madaya of children, skeletic children, and people were pretending that there was a starvation. So I could not bear this situation nor those pictures. So I went to the Ministry of Social Affairs and I proposed to bring help to Muaddamiyah. And after a long, negotiation, the families inside Muaddamiyah asked for evacuation. So I didn't enter with help or food for the besieged population, but rather to evacuate. I made an initiative, a big initiative, to evacuate the besieged population. And we were very surprised not to see not even one child that was, starving as we could see in the pictures. They were in delicate situation. They had difficulties to eat, to find all kind, of normal food. They would eat olives, they would eat bread, but of course they would not eat meat, and it's not good. But it was not the same, reality. And I think that Madaya, it's also like this, maybe a little bit more extreme. But nevertheless, very quickly, the government accepted to, let the humanitarian help enter inside Madaya. And we rejoiced about this. And what I say is not to minimize the suffering of people here and there, but to underline the manipulation. Always the manipulation will not help people, neither to find food security, neither to find what they need in terms of humanitarian aid. It's better to first of all be a non-partisan for the media, I mean, to show what everybody is suffering. Today, for example, in Homs, there was 2 car blasts, and many people were killed or very heavily wounded. I don't know if you got informed about it. I doubt. And so many people dying for nothing. I think they merit to have a small part of the everyday information. But this is the political way of distributing interest. Sometimes you find that this part of the population is very much, put in relief, put underlined in the media, and the other nobody talk about, you see.
Okay, thank you again for that. So the sort of, you mentioned previously the refugee situation. Now there's one particular aspect of this that I wanted to mention, because obviously a lot of refugees coming into Europe at the moment, but in the UK, most of the talk has been about what they're describing as unaccompanied children, and I suppose they're referring to children who have lost their parents as a result of the conflict. And what I really wanted to ask you, Mother Agnes, was what is the situation with unaccompanied children in Syria at the moment? Is it the case that there are lots of unaccompanied children that need help, or are they receiving help already? Because I have to say that unfortunately the UK doesn't have the best reputation with regard to dealing with child trafficking, for example, and I worry that perhaps this drive to bring unaccompanied children into Britain might end up badly for those children. So can you tell us a little bit about how children are looked after in Syria in these situations?
In Syria, it's a real tsunami that has altered the family life, and broken the ties. So you sadly will find a lot of non-accompanied children. In the regions that are under terrorist rule, those children are hired and to become fighters, terrorists, or car blasters. They will teach them how to carry explosives devices, to kill people. Or they will be sex slaves. And this is a very sad reality. And in those areas, it's impossible to move. So you cannot help those people. You cannot help those children. Now, a lot of IDPs, a lot of Syrian, they try to flee out of those areas. And so they come to the government-held area. There, it is easy to work. And I can tell you that a lot of initiatives are looking forward to help those unaccompanied children, to give them a shelter, to give them a family affection, until, to find out where are their parents. But it's not enough. We have to continue working on this matter. For the refugees, I draw your attention that also it is a big ball, a big scoop that happened immediately in a term of days and hours. And suddenly there were a lot of refugees going to Europe. It didn't come like this. This was something tailored for a specific interest and for a specific goal. And it is said that those people who are tailoring such events and such movement, they don't care, about the most vulnerable, like children. And of course, with the Islamic State, we have what I have talked about as a matter of sex slavery or just recycling the children into terrorists. They will also manipulate them everywhere, because everywhere you have people that are with bad intentions and with very narrow interest. So we are against all these wave of refugees. It was very possible to not to drive them so far and just let them, enter in countries that are not the same culture nor the same religion. And now you have a lot of problems in Europe. But the people, the powers who are supervising all what is happening, they have other interest. And so it's always the most innocent who pay.
Okay, so let's move on then, because obviously something which is a development which has happened in the last several months, of course, has been the involvement of Russia. And there seems to be a lot of media coverage now of Russia making a contribution to the recovery of the country in terms of land that is held by the government as opposed to land that's held by the armed opposition. What's the feeling among ordinary Syrians about the Russian intervention? Do they welcome it, or is it something that they think is interference, more foreign interference that really they don't want?
No, to tell you the truth, and I don't think I am exaggerating, all around us, everybody is very happy in a way that because it brings security and stabilization. Today, the war is an anti-terror war. And before Russia, United States and allies, they proclaimed to wanting, to deal with this war. But we didn't see good results. On the contrary, I remember you that after the entrance of United States and allies, we have seen a bigger development of the Islamic State, and many refugees and many humanitarian catastrophes. And we don't know why the United States is predicting that this struggle will last more than 20 years. Now, with Russia, things, are closer to reality. And people, they see it, they feel it. All the region in the southern part of Aleppo has been freed from terrorists. People, they are going back very quickly and with a lot of hope for their future. And we know thousands of IDPs who are just waiting the liberation of so many villages wasted by terrorists. They are just waiting to go back. So it's a real war against terror, and we thank Russia to come and also to afford martyrs. They have got some casualties, and they are doing it, and everybody is very happy with it. And we thank Russia, as we thank United States, as long as United States and their allies are really dealing against terror and not, if you want, monitoring terror. It's a difference.
Okay, and obviously, alongside what's going on with the Russian intervention, we have had peace talks going on. Now, the United Nations, according to Reuters here, is seeking more peace talks this week. Do you see progress being made on the diplomatic side? How is this developing?
Well, it is, yes, it is progressing when Mr. de Mistura is able to fix a date for a dialogue between all parties. It's positive. Of course, that we are praying for it, and we congratulate Mr. de Mistura to have been able to fix a date. Now, what is happening in reality? We were very much afraid when suddenly Saudi Arabia, who has nothing to become a monitor for democracy, because you have to live democracy and you have to be expert in democracy to be able to advise others or to help them implement democracy. So we were very much afraid when Saudi Arabia just invited some of the opposition to harden their positions and make them the sole representative of the Syrian people. We said that now there will be no talks, or the talks will be really biased. But we think that the good intention and also all the capacity that are existing inside opposition will be given their chance and will be able to find a common strategy, because I will tell you, the big disease of the opposition is to be totally divided, and in no way they could not. It was a failure during all those years to just have a common vision and a common strategy. This will make it difficult because on the other side, the government is homogeneous. And he has a plan. He has, I will not say it is better or worse, but at least he has a plan. He is a person or a juridical denomination who can say yes and who can say no, and who can deal with what, they can implement what they are saying. We hope that the opposition will be also responsible, united, and that all the parties will come to a common vision for a peaceful solution.
Brilliant. That would be great to see. I'd just like to final topic, really, I'd like to discuss your own work, because you're involved with a reconciliation initiative within Syria, which is very much, I believe, a grassroots thing. So can you tell us a little bit about your own work and how that fits in with the broader peace initiatives that are going on?
Yes. First of all, it's important to highlight that we are working in a total different field. It's another dimension. It's not a political dimension. It's not a dimension of people that rule the society. It's a dimension of the society itself. It is, as you said, grassrooted dimension. And it's the normal people that live together. They used to live together. They just want to face the reality of foreign intervention and foreign incentive for discriminatory conduct. So since 2012, there have been forums concerning to face the religious discrimination and religious apartheid. And this is the basis of the national reconciliation inside Syria. It was sometimes inspired by the Musalaha in Palestine, where you see leaders, spiritual leaders from both sides, Jewish and Muslim and Christian. They meet together to stabilize or to pacify the situation. In Syria also, reconciliation is based on forgiveness. It is based on tolerance. It is based on a pluralistic society, equality of chances, the equality of everybody, every citizens before the law, and also on international laws and on international humanitarian laws. Reconciliation is full of spirituality. Reconciliation is full of compassion, and reconciliation is apolitical. And people, they don't want to understand this. So when we have dealt, for example, reconciliation in places like Al-Wa'ar, now it is coming to an end. And many places, political or media, they always give us bad intention. Oh, they are trying this because they want the government, because they want. It's not like this. Normally, the people in Syria, they'd rather prefer a government to a non-government. And this, everybody should understand it. Because a government is reliable. Any government is more reliable than a non-government. A non-governmental condition. With a non-governmental condition, it means a governmentless condition. You have no security, you have no justice, you have no laws, you have precarity, and you have chaos. So I really wonder how the big powers, they tailored the situation in Syria to kill and to just misuse and put on retreat the government. It was not wise. In Iraq, we have seen what were the consequences of a governmentless state.
And Libya as
also
well.
yes, also in Libya. So why are they reiterating the same failure? I don't know. It's not wise. And I would like sometimes that those people would be, try to justice, because their way, their tailoring or their engineering of chaos, I really call this an engineering of chaos, is malevolent and is evil, and they should be tried to justice. Yes.
So just as a final point then, would it be a fair statement to say that really the reconciliation process is effectively in some ways reminding people what Syria was like before 2011? Is that to bring us right back to the beginning? Is that a fair point?
Look, I think that Syria will never become as the beginning. Now we have a Syria that is wounded. It's like a person who has lost an arm or a leg or an eye. Nothing will be as before. It's a big wounded person. It's a big wounded body. Everything is destroyed in Syria. Everything is destroyed. But nevertheless, in the heart, you have this breath of hope that people can live together, that people they can forgive one to each other. You know the miracle, and it's not really highlighted. Maybe you can highlight it. In region like Tartus, where the Tartus governorate in Syria, where you have a massive majority of Alawite. The Alawite have been really massacred and threatened to death, and they have endured terrible things. They receive the highest rate of IDPs coming from everywhere else, and with a majority of Sunnis. And you know that the struggle, the conflict became, as I told you, slowly by slowly, insidiously, a religious affair between Sunnis and non-Sunnis, mainly Alawite and Shia. I can tell you that we did not experience one sole event of violence from Alawite against Sunnis. Not even in the days where, like today, we have a big car blast with tens of victims, and they know that it is hate by hate of Alawite, or people, a fifth column, wanting to, sow a hatred, religious hatred, and trying to bring a violent reaction from the victims. We did not see any event. It is a miracle. And this is the real Syria. And we see also this in all the areas where you don't have a foreign intervention. And I think that's and also where the satellites are not heard. There is no way to put, because there is no electricity. So the satellites stations who spread the ideology of discrimination should be banned by the international community. They are, they leave them. They leave them on the satellite. They should ban them, because there is a everyday threat on the non-Sunnis, the non-Salafists, the non-Al-Qaeda, and the non-Islamic State people, that they must be killed, they must be beheaded. And now in Europe, you are also tasting this bitter condition. So reconciliation is a dynamic that must be supported by everybody, by the mainstream media, by the governments, by the UN agencies, by everybody, because it's the hope for the future. Even if the politics they arrive to an agreement. If the social tissue is still divided on a religious basis, on religious hatred, they will not be able to do anything. They will have problems. So it's better to work on the ground, very grassrooting activity. So all the people, the normal people, the real people in Syria, they live together, they accept together, they have this common life, this pluralistic life. And political things, must be, if you want, a complementary, something complementary to this. It's not before, the politic is not before, it's after. It's a must, to organize the society. But you cannot make a family, you cannot base a family on politics. It won't be a real family. And you cannot base a society on politics. You have to base a society on a durable, permanent alliance between all the different parties of this society. And this alliance is an everyday alliance where everyone will accept the other, will forgive the other, and will look with the other toward a better future where everybody is agent, is working for this better future. I think that those values are very important, even if maybe they are not in the charts of the politicians, but they have always existed since Cain and Abel. Without those values, Cain kills Abel, and the Islamic State, will operate without real force to condemn him and to make him really stop.
Mother Agnes, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. That was fantastic, 45 minutes. Thank you very much. How can people find out more? Is there a website that the Reconciliation Initiative has? Can they contact you to offer support? How can we give them more information?
Yes, I will be very happy. You can put my mail. You can put also, I would like to highlight the important impact of Mrs. Mairead Maguire, the Peace Laureate, Nobel Peace Laureate, who is like a mentor. She introduced herself in the beginning in 2012 to encourage us. And she also nominated myself and Reconciliation to be for the Peace Nobel Prize. So many things can be done. I know that you have universities. We have been working with universities, with many movements all over the world for reconciliation, and we can, always develop our possibilities and enhance our capacities. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much again, Mother Agnes. And
thank you for your interest.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody for watching. We will be back at the same time tomorrow. And I believe we'll be joined by Alex Thompson from Eastern Approaches. So we'll see you then. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.